Beelzebul appears in the Gospels as the prince of demons. His name is mentioned in Matthew 12, Mark 3, and Luke 11 when religious leaders accuse Jesus of casting out demons by Beelzebul's power. The name is likely derived from a Philistine deity referenced in 2 Kings 1, known as Beelzebub, which later Jewish tradition associated with demonic authority. By the 1st century, Beelzebul had come to represent a chief figure within a structured demonic hierarchy. The accusation against Jesus shows that people believed demons operated under leadership, not randomly or independently. There was an assumed kingdom of darkness with order and rank. Jesus responds by saying that a kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. His argument directly challenges the logic of their claim and acknowledges the concept of organized demonic power within the worldview of the time. Legion appears in Mark 5, Luke 8, and Matthew 8 as the collective name of the demons possessing a man in the region of the Gerasenes. When Jesus asks the spirit its name, the reply is, "My name is Legion, for we are many." The term legion was a Roman military word referring to thousands of soldiers, emphasizing the overwhelming number of spirits inhabiting the man. The possessed man lived among tombs, displayed unnatural strength, and could not be restrained with chains. The narrative presents the possession as severe and destructive, both physically and socially isolating. The demons beg Jesus not to send them out of the region, and instead request permission to enter a herd of pigs. This account highlights the New Testament portrayal of demons as multiple, organized, and conscious beings capable of speech, fear, and negotiation. Unclean spirits. The term unclean spirits appears frequently throughout the Gospels and Acts as a general description for demonic beings. Rather than naming a specific entity, this phrase emphasizes their spiritual impurity and opposition to holiness. In Jewish thought, uncleanness was connected to separation from God, contamination, and disorder. Calling these beings unclean highlights their corrupting influence. Unclean spirits are shown causing physical affliction, seizures, muteness, blindness, and extreme behavior. In several accounts, they recognize Jesus' authority and identify him as the Son of God before others do. They speak, react with fear, and obey commands to depart. Unlike named figures such as Beelzebul or Legion, unclean spirits represent the broader category of demonic activity in the New Testament. The repeated encounters throughout Jesus' ministry demonstrate that spiritual oppression was understood as a real and present force within first-century Jewish worldview and theology. Abaddon. Abaddon and Apollyon appear in Revelation 9 as the angel of the abyss. Abaddon is the Hebrew name meaning destruction, while Apollyon is the Greek equivalent meaning destroyer. This figure is described as the king over the locust-like beings released from the abyss during the sounding of the 5th trumpet. Unlike many other demons in Scripture, Abaddon is portrayed with a clear title and domain of authority. He rules over destructive forces associated with judgment. The text presents him not as a random spirit, but as a commanding figure connected to catastrophic events. Revelation's imagery is apocalyptic and symbolic, yet the description of Abaddon suggests hierarchy and structure within the realm of destructive spirits. His name itself emphasizes ruin and devastation, reinforcing the biblical theme that demonic power ultimately leads to destruction. Azazel. Azazel appears in Leviticus 16 during the instructions for the Day of Atonement. 2 goats are selected. One is sacrificed to the Lord, and the other is sent into the wilderness for Azazel. The high priest symbolically places the sins of the people onto this second goat before it is released. The identity of Azazel has been debated for centuries. Some interpret the word as simply meaning scapegoat. Others understand Azazel as a wilderness demon or fallen spiritual being associated with desolation and impurity. Later Jewish writings, especially in Second Temple literature, describe Azazel as a rebellious angel who taught humanity forbidden knowledge. In the biblical text itself, Azazel is linked to the wilderness, a place often associated with chaos and danger. The ritual symbolically removes sin from the community, sending it away into isolation, emphasizing separation from holiness and the removal of impurity. The lying spirit. In 1 Kings 22, the prophet Micaiah describes a vision of the heavenly court. In this scene, a spirit volunteers to entice King Ahab into battle by becoming a lying spirit in the mouths of his prophets. The plan is to deceive Ahab so that he will go to war and meet his downfall. The text does not provide a personal name for this spirit, but it clearly portrays an intentional being capable of strategy and deception. The narrative raises complex theological questions about divine sovereignty and spiritual agency. The spirit operates with permission, yet its role is explicitly to mislead. This passage shows that deception itself is presented as a spiritual activity. Unlike possession accounts in the New Testament, this spirit influences through false prophecy rather than physical control. The story emphasizes the danger of trusting flattering voices and highlights the biblical theme that truth and deception operate in spiritual conflict. Lilith appears in Isaiah 34:14 in a prophecy describing the desolation of Edom. Some English translations render the Hebrew word as night creature or screech owl, while others preserve the name Lilith. The verse depicts a ruined land inhabited by wild animals and mysterious beings associated with darkness. In later Jewish tradition, Lilith developed into a demonic figure connected to the night, danger, and chaos. However, the biblical text itself is brief and ambiguous. It does not provide narrative detail, personality, or actions beyond associating the term with a cursed, deserted landscape. The reference suggests that ancient audiences may have been familiar with folklore surrounding night spirits. Whether understood symbolically or as a literal being, Lilith represents the theme of desolation and spiritual unease, reinforcing the imagery of judgment and abandonment in Isaiah's prophecy. In ancient scripture, there are harrowing passages describing the people of Israel sacrificing to demons instead of to God. The entities receiving this forbidden worship are called the Shedim. But this isn't a name for a single demon lord like Azazel or Beelzebul. Instead, Shadim functions as a category. It identifies the foreign spiritual beings associated with pagan worship and idolatry. The emphasis isn't on demonic possession or dramatic encounters, but on something more insidious, misplaced devotion. The belief was that worship offered to idols was actually being directed toward these unseen spiritual entities. This language reveals a worldview where behind false gods and corrupted rituals stand real, active spiritual forces. The danger wasn't seen as merely cultural or symbolic, but as a genuine spiritual threat. Ultimately, the references to Shadim reinforce a central biblical theme, that absolute loyalty to God requires rejecting any rival spiritual powers that draw people away through deception. Asmodeus appears in the Book of Tobit, part of the Catholic and Orthodox canon. In the story, Asmodeus is the demon who kills the 7 husbands of Sarah on their wedding night before the marriages can be consummated. His actions create fear, grief, and social shame around her future prospects. The narrative portrays Asmodeus as driven by jealousy and desire, specifically targeting marriage. Unlike many New Testament possession accounts, this story centers on personal torment and repeated tragedy rather than public spectacle. The demon's power is ultimately broken through prayer, faithfulness, and divine intervention mediated by the angel Raphael. Asmodeus reflects the broader Second Temple understanding of demons as personal, destructive forces capable of interfering in family life. His defeat reinforces a consistent biblical theme. Demonic influence is real, but it is not ultimate. Mastema. Mastema appears in the Book of Jubilees, a Second Temple Jewish text influential in early demonology. Mastema is portrayed as a chief of spirits who opposes humanity and requests authority to test and accuse. His name is often associated with hostility or enmity. In Jubilees, Mastema plays a role similar to an adversarial prosecutor. He asks permission to retain a portion of evil spirits after the flood so that they may continue to lead people astray. This depiction presents a structured spiritual hierarchy where destructive forces operate under limited authority. While Mastema does not appear in the Protestant canon, his presence in Jewish literature helps explain the development of later ideas about organized demonic leadership. The text reflects a worldview in which spiritual conflict is ongoing, purposeful, and governed by defined ranks rather than chaos. The Watchers. Watchers are described in 1 Enoch as a group of angels who descended to earth, took human wives, and revealed forbidden knowledge. Their actions are connected to the events briefly referenced in Genesis 6, where the sons of God took daughters of men and produced the Nephilim. In Enochic tradition, the Watchers are not merely disobedient angels, but teachers of corruption. They introduce warfare, sorcery, astrology, and other practices that spread violence and disorder. Their rebellion results in judgment, and they are bound and imprisoned awaiting final punishment. Although the Book of Enoch is not part of the Protestant canon, it heavily influenced Jewish and early Christian thought about demons and fallen angels. The Watchers provide a framework for understanding how spiritual rebellion was believed to affect human history in organized and catastrophic ways. The spirits of the Nephilim. Nephilim are mentioned briefly in Genesis 6 as the offspring of the sons of God and the daughters of men. While the biblical text does not describe their fate in detail, Second Temple literature expands the story. In 1 Enoch, when the Nephilim are destroyed, their physical bodies perish, but their spirits remain. These disembodied spirits are described as wandering the earth, bringing oppression, temptation, and suffering to humanity. Unlike fallen angels who are bound, the spirits of the Nephilim become what later tradition identifies as demons. They are portrayed as restless, seeking influence and disruption among the living. This explanation provided an origin story for many forms of spiritual affliction in Jewish thought. It framed demons not as eternal beings, but as the corrupted remnants of a hybrid rebellion, linking supernatural defiance directly to human turmoil. If you enjoy this video about demons in the Bible, watch this video next.